Hey there. So, with the training effects of exercise on our respiratory system, we're actually really speaking about primarily the adaptation of our respiratory muscles or and accessory respiratory muscles. And here's how that looks and how that plays out. It's a relatively new idea that's been put out there. There's at times somewhat conflicting evidence, but definitely for a longer period of time for the clinical world, so like rehabilitative or chronic lung conditions, there has been this use or development of training the respiratory muscles. Okay, so anything that's utilized to increase your maximum inspiration and the power to breathe in. So that includes the diaphragm as far as it contracting and creating more volume, or your intercostal muscles, again, expanding your rib cage to create more volume that way. So the idea is by creating more strength or endurance in these respiratory muscles, we're going to take away from, or sorry, we won't take away quite as soon from our working muscles. So again, if we're running or playing some other sport, typically we use our limbs. And so again, if we make our respiratory muscles strong, we can save energy from being diverted from working limbs to help us breathe, but rather, if our breathing is efficient, we can leave more energy in the limbs. Okay, and so that's where the application in athletics has occurred more recently. The one important note, I kind of already mentioned that, is that going through this process of training respiratory muscles doesn't necessarily improve VO2 max. So that will stay the same. That's based on other metrics and other factors, nor will it increase the lactate threshold, or the maximum amount of lactate you're supposed to be able to increase. Okay. Yeah. So one of the things that we'll find with the guidelines for respiratory muscle training, you need some sort of form of overload. The intensity should not be at full maximum force, but should be somewhere between the 50, maybe up to 70% range as far as a 1 RM as far as your inhale. You can do a duration of 1 to 2 sets for 30 to 40 consecutive breaths. I'll show you the device actually. So this is the main device that people use here when they're talking about how to build this setup. A frequency twice a day, 2 to 3 days a week. Progressing, specifically depends on body position and flow. Detraining will happen somewhat quickly. I mean, not as quick as muscular detraining or neurological detraining. So yeah, 2 to 3 months, but you can reduce frequency after a while once you get to your peak in about 18 weeks. And again, the focus is on your diaphragm and then the primary accessory respiratory muscles. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about the altitude mask in particular. So it's primarily the respiratory muscles for inhaling that we're focusing on, but you can focus on the exhaling or expiratory muscles as well, or in combo. It depends on what device you're using and where you feel you'll most benefit from the sport. Typically, based on what you know about ventilation now, hopefully you have some idea that maybe working on expiratory muscles for, say, like an endurance-based sport where CO2 builds up a lot might be more important than inspiratory, but again, there's still more research that needs to be done. And again, so you might have seen a lot of, or some more people with these altitude training masks, which ultimately doesn't decrease the amount of available oxygen that you're breathing per se. It adds more resistance for your inhalation It still allows you to breathe out and gas to vent out normally. So therefore, again, this would focus more on inspiratory muscle building. And there's these certain devices where you can decide whether it's your inhale where you want resistance or exhale you want resistance. And just to reiterate, that's the device that has this training protocol. Okay, okay, and that's it for specific training adaptations for the respiratory system.